Hello friends, speech is a very complex process. On one hand we have people, very few people with great oratorial skills and very great speech giving ability. On the other hand, we see some difficulty in speech, speech disorders or stammering, stuttering and disorders associated with speech. So let's understand in this video about the physiology of speech and disorders of speech. At the first prof level, you get a question on speech. Generally, it's a short note, or you may get a question on aphasias or speech disorders. So let's see what is involved in the process of speech. Now, speech, also called as vocalization, it's a highly skilled voluntary movement. And basically it involves two apparatuses. There is one central speech apparatus which consists of brain areas. So what to speak and how to speak and all that will be decided over there. And then we have peripheral speech apparatus, that is the execution of the speech. Final execution of the speech will be by peripheral speech apparatus, which includes lungs and the organs of mouth, etc. Now talking about the central speech apparatus, as we said, it's a complex and highly skilled voluntary movement. Therefore, it will involve the parts of the brain which are concerned with voluntary movements. So, motor cortex, cerebellum and the other components which are involved in the motor activity. The point that needs to be understood is that, look, we have two cerebral hemispheres and body halves of the body are represented in those hemispheres almost like a mirror like fashion, but speech areas are present only in the dominant hemisphere. It does not need to be present in both hemispheres, and therefore it's only in the dominant or categorical hemisphere that you have speech areas. And the third part is, of course, speech muscles, muscles of vocalization. They get largest representation in the motor cortex. If you see the motor cortex, two areas get maximum representation and they are performing highly skilled activities. One is muscles of thumb and the other one is muscles of speech. Of course, these two functions are most highest order functions in humans. What you separates humans from other beings is these two functions, and therefore speech muscles get largest representation in the motor cortex along with muscles of thumb. All right, now let's go in the reverse and first understand the peripheral speech apparatus. How final execution of the speech occurs. Now, so far as the execution is concerned, it has two steps. First step is phonation. You know what is phonation? Production of the sound. So, lungs, larynx, vocal cords, these parts are involved. Exhaled air, expired air, as it comes out, it puts vocal cords into vibrations, and these vibrations will produce the sound. That's called as phonation, part 1, step 1. And then the second step is articulation. As the sound is coming out through the oral cavity, organs of the oral cavity, they articulate in such a fashion, particular manner, that the sound coming out, while it is coming out, it gets converted into a spoken word. For instance, if I have to say P, then the lips have to be articulated in a certain manner. If I have to say C, then tongue and palate has to be articulated in a certain fashion. So that is how the articulation works, and it involves organs of the oral cavity, lips, tongue, palate, and I have not included nose in this, of course, because many people seem to have even nasal twang in their normal speech. However, this is the peripheral speech apparatus, and this is how final execution of the spoken words will take place. Now coming to the main part of this discussion, where It's a little complex. So central speech areas. Mainly, there are two areas involved in the speech: Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Wernicke's area is the sensory area for speech. It's present in the superior temporal gyrus. And the Broca's area is the motor area for speech. It is present in the inferior frontal gyrus. As you can see in the diagram, superior temporal gyrus, Wernicke's area or Brodmann's area 22, and Broca's area, inferior frontal gyrus, which is the motor area. You know, motor cortex is located in the frontal lobe. So obviously, motor area for speech, which will finally send signals for the speech, it's located in the frontal lobe, inferior frontal gyrus, areas 44 and 45. So these two are the main areas. Apart from these areas, there are a few more areas which are associated with these. For instance, we have de Gerin's area. This is sensory speech area, and therefore it is associated with the Wernicke's area. And we have another area, Exner's area. As you can see here, Exner's area is located in the frontal lobe, and it's a motor writing center. So these are the areas of the brain concerned with the production of speech. One more thing, sensory speech area, the Wernicke's area, once it has processed certain information, then it will send signals to the Broca's area by a bundle of fibers called as arcuate fasciculus. Fasciculus means bundle of nerve fibers. So arcuate fasciculus will send the signals from Wernicke's area, or carry the signals from Wernicke's area to the Broca's area, and final processing and speech production will occur by signals from the Broca's area. Let's understand this process in detail now. Wernicke's area, the sensory area for speech, this is where comprehension will take place. See, this area receives inputs from various other parts of the brain. It will receive inputs from the auditory areas, visual areas, even sensory cortex, and based on that, the Wernicke's area will comprehend the situation. What is the situation? What needs to be spoken? All this comprehension will take place first in the Wernicke's area. So once this sensory information is gathered, then this will be sent forward in the frontal lobe, Broca's area, where processing of this information will take place. This information is processed. What to speak will be finally determined here in the Broca's area, and I've already mentioned the signals are sent forward via arcuate fasciculus. And then once Broca's area determines what is to be spoken finally, then it will generate the motor signals. Now these motor signals will be sent via the insula to the motor cortex of the frontal lobe, area 4, the primary motor cortex, and particularly the signals will be sent to the face representing area, because finally the speech needs to be executed by the organs of the oral cavity and the muscles involved. Therefore, the area that represents the face will get signals from the Broca's area, and then from that area, from the face representing area, descending fibers will be sent down to the peripheral speech apparatus, and the execution of that spoken word will take place. So this is the schematic representation of how the information is processed and finally speech is delivered, or the final decision is arrived, and then execution takes place. Okay, now that was about the speech and the physiology of speech. The second part is disorders of speech. So let's understand what type of lesions can lead to speech disorders. Dysphonia. Look, first two disorders will be easy to understand, because we have said the speech involves phonation and articulation. phonation was production of sound, and articulation means conversion of that sound into a spoken word. So first two disorders are related to that. First, dysphonia, problem in phonation, sound production. Now this will produce a hoarse speech. You know, hoarseness of voice, we commonly experience this. Now this reason for this will be mostly peripheral. It will not be because of the brain areas involvement. So mostly peripheral, for example, laryngitis. If there is laryngitis or even vocal nodules, teachers nodules for that matter, it may result in dysphonia. And the other one is dysarthria. Dysarthria, difficulty in articulation. So problem of articulation. This will result in a slurred speech, little unintelligible and slurred speech. There is no problem with choice of words. The person is definite about the choice of words. Only thing is those words are not coming out properly. So that's called as dysarthria. Now, difficulty in articulation. What are various reasons that lead to this? Cerebellar lesions. We have already mentioned that cerebellum is involved in the process of speech because this is after all a voluntary motor activity, and cerebellum is the master coordinator for all the voluntary motor activity. So cerebellar disorders or cerebellar lesions lead to scanning type of speech or staccato type of speech, short bursts of words and with slurred type of words, slurring of the speech. That's cerebellar lesions or brainstem diseases or even neuromuscular junction diseases. For example, myasthenia gravis. So finally, the muscle needs to contract, and if there is a problem with neuromuscular transmission, it will result in dysarthria. The defect is called as dysarthria. Now coming to the next set of disorders, aphasias. Aphasia, or also called as dysphasia. This is the problem with central speech apparatus. Whenever if there is a problem or lesion with the central speech apparatus, the areas that we saw just now, Wernicke's area or Broca's area or arcuate fasciculus, it will result in aphasias. Now, problem here is language content of the speech is affected. We saw the previous two disorders, dysphonia, dysarthria. The words are not a problem. Language is not a problem. Only the delivery was the problem. But in this case, in the case of aphasia, words or language content itself is problematic. About the chosen words, there is no certainty, and therefore, let's see what these aphasias are. Lesion is generally in the, not generally, the lesion will be in the dominant hemisphere, of course, because speech centers are located in the dominant hemisphere. Let's start with these aphasias. Some basic defects, for example, anomia, or anomic aphasia. Anomia means inability to produce correct word. So correct word is either not properly known to the person or unable to express. So inability to produce the correct word. And paraphasia. Paraphasia, look, there is aphasia when the person is not able to speak the words and the language also is not correct. Whereas paraphasia means wrong words will be spoken and or there will be irrelevant words. They don't have that meaning. So meaningless, irrelevant words are spoken. That's paraphasia. We also use the term paraphrasing sometimes for one word. We use another word that's called as paraphrasing, but that's normal. This is paraphasia, where central speech apparatus is affected. Now talking about the aphasias, on a very basic level, there are two types of aphasias. This is a simplistic understanding of the aphasias. Fluent aphasia versus non-fluent aphasia. When there is fluency in the speech, it will be called as fluent aphasia. the speech will be fluent, but there will be wrong words. Selection of words will be wrong. So verbal output is normal or sometimes even increased. I mean, person will try to express with more and more words. Verbal output will increase, but there will be selection of wrong words. Lesion is behind the central sulcus. If you see the diagram, behind the central sulcus, there is Wernicke's area and all the sensory areas located. So if there is a lesion behind the central sulcus in the dominant hemisphere, it results in the fluent aphasia. Why is it fluent? Because motor area, that is Broca's area, is unaffected, and therefore the motor signaling to the speech apparatus is normal. Therefore there would be speech fluency, but then comprehension of the language is affected because Wernicke's area is affected or having lesion. So it will result in fluent speech. There will be difficulty in speech comprehension and repetition. And the other type is non-fluent aphasia. Now you can guess, if the lesion is in front of the central sulcus in the motor cortex, then it will result in non-fluent type of aphasia. Because motor cortex and Broca's area is involved. Broca's area is the motor area for speech. The motor signaling to the peripheral speech apparatus itself is affected, and therefore there would not be any fluency in the speech, resulting in the non-fluent type of aphasia. Now, in this, verbal output is reduced. So compare, in the fluent aphasia, verbal output, I mean the number of words you will choose to express something, that's a verbal output. That will be normal in the case of fluent aphasia, but in this case, non-fluent aphasia, it will be reduced because those signals from the motor area, Broca's area, are affected. Lesion, as I mentioned, anterior to the central sulcus, involving the Broca's area, motor area for speech. Apart from that, there is also global aphasia. If the lesion is in the widespread areas of the dominant hemisphere, so it will be involving lots of areas, and therefore it is called as global aphasia. Large lesions involving Wernicke's area, Broca's area, arcuate fasciculus, there would be no language production at all. So comprehension is affected, and then verbal output, motor signaling to the lungs, etc., also is affected. Therefore hardly any verbal output and no proper language production, no proper communication possible at all. Apart from that, there are some other disorders like pure word blindness. Pure word blindness, sometimes called as alexia, dyslexia, pure word blindness, inability to recognize the meaning of written or printed words. Written or printed words are difficult to comprehend in such an abnormality, and it's called as pure word blindness. Speech is not disrupted. Mind you, in this condition, speech is normal, but person is unable to comprehend the meaning of a written word, and therefore pure word blindness. This happens due to the subcortical lesion between the visual centers and the speech areas. So the connection between the visual centers of the occipital lobe and the speech areas, if this is disrupted, this connection, then the person since beginning is unable to comprehend the written words. He or she can see those words but unable to comprehend them. Now, just to have another simplistic way of understanding, we have seen already there are three aphasias: fluent aphasia, non-fluent aphasia, and a third one which I am adding here is a conduction aphasia. Conduction aphasia means when there is a lesion of the arcuate fasciculus. We have seen already arcuate fasciculus is involved in conduction of signals from Wernicke's area to Broca's area. So a lesion of that will result in the conduction aphasia. Just let's revise it once again. In the case of fluent aphasia, there is poor comprehension and poor repetition. Poor comprehension, because Wernicke's area is affected, which is supposed to comprehend the situation and comprehend the spoken language. So that's poor comprehension, poor repetition. In the case of non-fluent aphasia, non-fluent, when Broca's area is damaged, sometimes also called as pure motor aphasia, good comprehension but poor repetition. So in the case of motor aphasia, comprehension is fine, Wernicke's area is working, but poor repetition. So just make a comparison between the two. Fluent aphasia, poor comprehension, poor repetition. Non-fluent or motor aphasia, good comprehension but poor repetition. And conduction aphasia, which is of the arcuate fasciculus lesion, it is similar to fluent aphasia, like a good comprehension but poor repetition, because it's just the conduction of signals that is affected. Wernicke's area is fine working and therefore good comprehension. And apart from that, some other disorders of speech, stammering or stuttering, may be due to involvement of brain areas, or maybe communication anxiety or social factors. So with training, this can certainly improve, the speech can certainly improve in such types of difficulty in speech. So that was a quick classification of aphasias, quick description, and therefore if you get a short note on aphasias or maybe a long question, physiology of speech, and add a note on aphasias, this much content will be good enough to fetch you good marks.